I never intended to uncover a hidden history. My journey began, much like many of yours might, with a simple genealogy project. You know the drill: tracing family trees, sifting through old records, piecing together the lives of ancestors. It's a common, comforting pursuit, connecting us to our past. But as I delved deeper, somewhere between the faded census data and the brittle immigration papers, I started noticing something peculiar. A pattern, not just in one branch of my family, but echoing across countless lineages, a whisper of a story that defied conventional explanation. Names were changing, not gradually, not through the natural evolution of language or the simple act of marriage. These were abrupt, wholesale transformations. Within a single generation, sometimes even within a single year, entire family identities seemed to be rewritten. The official narratives offered easy answers: immigration, assimilation, clerical errors. And while those certainly played a role in many cases, what I was seeing felt different. It felt coordinated, like deliberate acts designed to sever entire populations from a heritage they were never supposed to remember. Let me show you what I mean. If you look at immigration records in the United States, particularly between 1880 and 1920, a fascinating anomaly emerges. Families arriving from Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and parts of Russia often bore complex surnames, rich with unusual suffixes and linguistic structures that didn't quite align with the regions they supposedly hailed from. Then, within weeks or months of processing through iconic gateways like Ellis Island, those names vanished. They weren't just shortened or anglicized in the way we typically understand. They were replaced. A Tartakov became a Thompson. A Tartarescu transformed into a Taylor. Children with the surname Tartarian were suddenly registered in school as Turner, Travis, or Thomas. This wasn't an isolated incident. It happened to thousands, across multiple entry points, spanning decades. The mainstream explanation suggests this was largely voluntary, immigrants choosing new names to fit in, to escape discrimination, to embrace a fresh start. And yes, that absolutely happened. There's ample documentation to support it. But the sheer scale and unsettling precision of this particular pattern, specifically targeting names with a certain linguistic resonance, began to hint at something far more profound. It led me down a rabbit hole, connecting these seemingly individual acts of name-changing to a much grander, more controversial theory: the existence of a forgotten, advanced civilization known as Tartaria. For those unfamiliar, the Tartarian theory posits that an advanced global civilization, often referred to as the Old World, existed until relatively recently, not in ancient history, but as late as the 1800s. This civilization, proponents argue, left behind an architectural legacy that official history struggles to explain. Magnificent, elaborate structures with consistent design principles and advanced engineering found in cities across the globe, from San Francisco to St. Petersburg, Melbourne to Kolkata. Buildings that share a common architectural language, often featuring curious details like first floors buried underground or windows half submerged, as if a catastrophic event, a mud flood, had covered the original ground levels. And here's where the name changes and the architecture converge. The same period when these families were shedding their Tartarian surnames, roughly 1870 to 1920, almost perfectly coincides with when these grand buildings began to be conveniently attributed to local architects with neatly packaged paper trails. If you erase the names, you erase the people. And if you erase the people, you erase the knowledge of who truly built these incredible structures. It's a systematic erasure, not just of identity, but of an entire historical narrative. If you think this was just an American phenomenon, a quirk of the Ellis Island experience, look closer at the records across the Atlantic. In the 1890s and early 1900s, census data from France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Russian Empire reveal similar, unsettling discontinuities. families with surnames deeply rooted in what researchers describe as Tartar or Tartarian linguistic origins suddenly vanish from administrative logs. They didn't die and they didn't move, they simply became other people. In Moscow, for instance, the Tartakovs appear clearly in the 1880s census. By 1897, they are listed as the Tarasovs. Same address, same profession, but a completely different name with no explanation for the transition. In Prussia, a family named Tartenberg is documented across 3 generations from 1820 to 1870. Then, in 1891, the property is suddenly registered under the name Tannenberg. The family structure remains identical, yet the documentation for this change is conspicuously missing. This raises a critical question. Why would established families with property rights and social standing voluntarily erase their identities across multiple countries, all within the same narrow time window, and all while pretending nothing had changed? The deeper I went, the more the pattern repeated. France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Romania. But perhaps the most glaring anomaly lies within the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, the Ottomans maintained remarkably detailed population records, tax registers, military lists, and property deeds that were incredibly comprehensive. Yet, between 1870 and 1920, records of families with Tartarian surnames become increasingly sparse. When they do appear, they are often noted as having adopted new surnames under various reform edicts. The old names simply stop appearing. What makes this so suspicious is that the Ottoman Empire was historically multilingual and relatively tolerant of diverse naming conventions. Greeks kept Greek names, Armenians kept Armenian names, Arabs and Kurds maintained their familial identities. So why was there a specific, urgent need for Tartarian names to disappear? The official explanation of modernization collapses here. If the goal was simple assimilation, why target this specific linguistic group so systematically while leaving others intact? This brings us to what I call the coordination problem. We're talking about a phenomenon that spans multiple continents, dozens of countries, and vastly different political systems, monarchies, empires, emerging democracies, and colonial administrations. And yet, within the same approximate time frame, all of these systems implemented remarkably similar policies that resulted in the exact same outcome: the systematic erasure of Tartarian heritage from official records. No international treaty mandated this. No global conference was ever held to coordinate it. No single power controlled all these territories simultaneously. And yet, it happened everywhere, all at once. How does something like this occur without central organization? How do thousands of bureaucrats across different languages and cultures simultaneously decide to rewrite the lineage of a specific people? The evidence suggests something much larger than a bureaucratic coincidence or organic cultural change. It suggests a global reset of memory, a synchronized effort to ensure that the next generation would have no linguistic link to the civilization that came before. If you're finding this research as unsettling as I did, consider subscribing or joining our community. This kind of investigative work takes time, and your support helps keep these forgotten histories from staying buried. But as strange as the coordination is, the most haunting part isn't what was written, it's the silence that followed. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of this entire phenomenon isn't the names that were changed, but the silence that followed. When other ethnic groups in history faced persecution or forced assimilation, there was almost always a record of resistance. We find protests, uprisings, frantic letters, hidden diaries, and newspaper articles decrying the injustice. There was a human trail of people saying, "This is happening to us and it is wrong." But for the Tartarian name changes, there is nothing. No documented resistance, no recorded protests, no family letters lamenting a stolen identity. The silence is deafening, and that silence raises more questions than any official answer could ever resolve. Were these families threatened into compliance? Were the changes so deeply embedded in the mundane, bureaucratic routine of the era that no one thought to resist? Or is the documentation simply missing? removed, destroyed, or hidden in archives that remain off-limits to the public? We don't know. And that's where the official narrative becomes impossible to ignore, not because of what it explains, but because of what it refuses to address. If you search for academic studies on this specific global pattern, you will find almost nothing. There are countless papers on immigration, hundreds of studies on assimilation, and detailed linguistic analyses of surname evolution. These are all valid and well-researched. But on this specific phenomenon, the coordinated global erasure of Tartarian surnames within a 50-year window, there is only a void. A few scattered references here, a footnote there, but no comprehensive investigation. It's as if the academic community collectively decided that this particular chapter of history wasn't worth opening. This systematic silence has a profound effect on us today. It means that for many of you watching this, your very name might be a mask. It might be a label applied by a bureaucrat a century ago to hide a connection to a world that was being systematically dismantled. When you look at your family tree and see that sudden shift in the late 1800s, you aren't just seeing assimilation. You might be looking at the moment your ancestors were severed from a legacy of advanced technology, grand architecture, and a global culture that the modern world wasn't ready to acknowledge. Think about the implications. If you erase the names, you erase the builders. If you erase the builders, the magnificent structures they left behind, the star forts, the grand exhibitions, the impossible cathedrals, become mysteries without authors. They become anomalies or trends rather than the achievements of a specific people. By changing your name, they didn't just change how you were addressed, they changed how you perceive your own potential. They took a descendant of a global advanced civilization and turned them into a newcomer in a world they might have actually built. The pattern is there, hidden in plain sight within your own genealogy. It's in the census records of Moscow, the immigration logs of New York, and the property deeds of Istanbul. It's a story written in the spaces between the lines, in the names that were deleted and the silence that was enforced. If this research has made you question what you've been told about your own history, you are not alone. Leave a comment below with your thoughts. I read every single one, and your insights often help shape our future investigations. We may never get a formal apology for the erasure of this heritage, but by simply remembering, by asking the questions, and by reclaiming the names that were taken, we begin to break the silence. Because the truth isn't just in the books they let us read, it's in the names they forced us to forget. Thanks for watching.